HFY story humanity, fuck yeah, sci-fi story science fiction alien invasion, post-apocalyptic space battle stellar weapon sun eater humanity's revenge, last stand sacrifice story earth destroyed space opera epic sci-fi audiobook human resistance, forbidden weapon cosmic warfare humanity, survives defiant humans alien fleet space combat emotional sci-fi. Heroic sacrifice never surrender humanity's fire last survivors outer space future warfare extinction event human spirit hope in darkness sci-fi narration YouTube sci-fi long-form story. The Kethran battle choir sang victory hymns across 17 channels as their flagship Dominion's edge hung above Earth's irradiated crust. Commander Vosh'kal extended all four arms in triumph, mandibles clicking laughter at the blackened sphere below. But in the shadow of Neptune's trailing moon, a human named Marcus Chen sat alone in a dying freighter, his finger resting on a button labeled in 12 languages, "Do not engage." The weapon hummed, the stars held their breath. Marcus hadn't slept in 47 hours. The observation deck of the salvage hauler Persephone's Hope smelled like burned wiring and recycled air gone stale, and the viewport showed him everything he'd lost. Earth, wrapped in its funeral shroud of ash and radiation, spinning silent and dead beneath the Kethran fleet. 200 warships formed a crescent across near-Earth orbit, their hulls painted in the ceremonial crimson of conquest. The battle choir's transmission leaked through every unshielded frequency, a cacophony of alien jubilation that felt like nails dragged across his skull. He pressed his palm to the cold glass. Somewhere down there, buried under a kilometer of rubble in what used to be Sao Paulo, his daughter Lena had been building a treehouse. She'd asked him to help her finish it when he got back from this supply run. That was 6 weeks ago. The Kethrans had arrived 4 weeks ago. The bombardment had lasted 9 minutes. Persephone's Hope, this is Refuge Station Gamma, a voice crackled through his headset. Yuki Tanaka, the last traffic controller in the outer system. Marcus, please confirm your status. You're drifting into the exclusion zone. He didn't answer. The button under his right hand pulsed with a faint amber glow, waiting. The weapon it would activate, officially designated Project Helios 7, unofficially called the Sun Eater, sat clamped to Persephone's cargo bay like a tumor. It was a relic from the Synthesis Wars, a prototype so dangerous that the United Earth Council had ordered it dismantled. But Marcus had been part of the decommissioning team, and he'd buried the core in a forgotten depot on Titan instead of destroying it. He'd told himself it was insurance. He'd told himself humanity might need it someday. Today had come. Commander Vosh'kal to all subordinate vessels. The Kethran leader's voice boomed across the open channel, translated by software into clipped, arrogant English. Observe the final resting place of the species that called themselves guardians of this star. They built monuments to their own greatness. They reached for the heavens with pathetic metal hands, and now, ash, silence, a lesson to any who would resist the Kethran dominion. Laughter rippled through the transmission, clicks, hisses, harmonic trills. 200 ships, 40,000 soldiers, all celebrating the end of his world. Marcus tapped the console. The Sun Eater's diagnostic screen blinked green across every metric. Fuel cells charged, gravitational lensing array aligned. Ignition sequence armed. The weapon didn't destroy ships. It didn't fire projectiles. It did something worse. It created a localized stellar ignition event, a miniature sun that devoured everything within 500,000 kilometers, feeding on matter and energy until nothing remained but vacuum and light. The cost? The operator had to be close. Close enough to paint the target, close enough to die. Marcus. Yuki's voice cracked with exhaustion. We're reading a massive energy signature from your position. Please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing. He smiled, small and bitter. Tell the survivors to look away from Earth in about 90 seconds. It's going to get bright. Marcus, no, we need you. There are children on Refuge Gamma. We need every ship, They'll have one fewer nightmare to worry about. He cut the channel. The Kethran choir swelled into a new verse, something triumphant and cruel. Vosh'kal's voice rose above it. Let this be recorded. On the 12th rotation of their moon, humanity ended. Not with honor, not with a fight worthy of song, with whimpering. Marcus closed his eyes. Lena had loved pancakes with strawberry jam. She'd wanted to be a botanist. She'd drawn pictures of forests that would never grow. He opened his eyes. Commander, he whispered to the viewport, to the fleet, to the ghost of his daughter, you should have checked the corners. He pressed the button. The Sun Eater woke like a god stirring from a dream. Deep in Persephone's cargo bay, the core, a sphere of compressed neutronium wrapped in quantum containment fields, began to unravel. The first stage was silent. Gravitational lensing arrays bent space around the weapon, creating a pocket of curved reality that pulled in stray hydrogen, cosmic dust, anything with mass. The second stage hummed, a low vibration that rattled Marcus's teeth as magnetic coils spun up to relativistic speeds, compressing the gathered matter into a seed no larger than a grain of sand. The third stage was fire. A pinprick of light bloomed in the cargo bay, white-hot and impossible. It wasn't an explosion, it was birth, the sudden, screaming arrival of a newborn star. The containment field shattered, and the light punched through Persephone's hull like tissue paper, expanding in a sphere of plasma that turned the freighter into vapor in a heartbeat. Marcus had time to see the cockpit glass crack, to feel his skin begin to burn, and then there was only light and heat and the roaring certainty that he'd made the right choice. The miniature sun didn't stop. It grew, fed by its own gravity, pulling in more matter from the surrounding void. It doubled in size every second, a mile-wide sphere of fusion becoming 2 miles, 4-8, a cancerous bloom of stellar fire that screamed toward the Kethran fleet at 1/10 the speed of light. On the bridge of Dominion's edge, Vosh'kal's laughter died mid-click. Alarms shrieked across every console. A tactical officer, a young Kethran named Silthar, stared at her screen, mandibles frozen in disbelief. Commander, we're detecting an anomalous energy signature. Origin point, human salvage vessel, grid sector 9 Epsilon. What kind of signature? Silthar's voice broke. Stellar ignition. Commander, they're igniting a sun. Vosh'kal spun toward the viewport. The blackness of space had been torn open by a sphere of light so bright it burned afterimages into his compound eyes. It was expanding, growing, a tidal wave of fire that swallowed the trailing edge of the fleet, 3 frigates, a troop carrier, a resupply barge, before anyone could react. The ships didn't explode. They dissolved, their hulls peeling away in streams of molten metal that fed the growing star. All vessels, evasive maneuvers, Vosh'kal roared, disengage from orbit, scatter formation, but the Sun Eater was faster. It had reached critical mass, a miniature star 30 miles across, and its gravity well was a trap. Ships tried to break orbit, their engines flaring blue-white as they clawed for escape velocity, but the star pulled harder. A destroyer named Claw of Dominion made it halfway to safe distance before the tidal forces ripped it in half, spilling crew and atmosphere into the void. A medical frigate tumbled end over end into the fire, its distress beacon screaming for 17 seconds before cutting out. Vosh'kal gripped the command rail with all 4 hands, his mandibles clenched so tight they ached. The battle choir had gone silent. 200 ships had become 190, 180. 170, the light was everywhere, drowning out Earth, Neptune, the distant sun. There was only the fire and the screaming of his crew. Where did they get this weapon? Silthar whispered. This isn't possible. Humans don't have stellar ignition technology. Vosh'kal didn't answer. He was staring at the tactical display, watching the red icons of his fleet wink out one by one. The humans were supposed to be dead, broken, conquered, but one dying human in a salvage freighter had just set a star on fire and thrown it at them like a spear. The Sun Eater reached its peak, a sphere of plasma and light 50 miles wide, gravity so intense it bent the orbits of nearby moons. And then, slowly, it began to starve. The weapon was designed to burn hot and fast, consuming everything within range before collapsing under its own mass. But in the 30 seconds of its life, it had devoured 63 Kethran warships, evaporated 250,000 soldiers, and turned Dominion's Edge's victory into a funeral pyre. Vosh'kal watched the light fade. The star shrank, dimmed, collapsed into a cooling ember that drifted away on solar wind. Silence filled the bridge. The viewport showed open space, scattered debris, and the distant curve of Earth, still dead, still irradiated, but somehow defiant in its ruin. Commander, Silthar said softly, we've lost 32% of the fleet. The humans, there's only one survivor station left in this system. A refugee outpost near Saturn. Orders. Vosh'kal's mandibles clicked once, sharp and cold. Burn it. But even as he gave the order, something gnawed at his certainty. The human hadn't run, hadn't begged. He'd smiled. Vosh'kal had seen the infrared feed, had watched the man's face in the seconds before ignition, and then he'd chosen annihilation. What kind of species did that? What kind of desperation or rage or love drove someone to turn themselves into a star? the Kethran fleet began to regroup. But the song had gone out of them, the laughter was ash. And in the shadow of Saturn's rings on Refuge Station Gamma, Yuki Tanaka sat in the observation dome with 300 survivors and watched the light fade. A child named Emilia, no older than 6, tugged at her sleeve. "Miss Yuki, was that Mr. Chen?" Yuki nodded, eyes wet. "Yeah, kiddo, that was him. Did he win?" She looked out at the stars, at the empty space where 63 warships used to orbit. "He bought us time." Refuge Station Gamma wasn't a station so much as a lifeboat stitched together from scrap. It clung to the shadow of Titan's northern pole, a patchwork cylinder of repurposed HAB modules, cargo containers, and salvaged hull plating held together by welds and hope. 372 souls called it home now, the last survivors of Earth's outer colonies, pulled from dying stations and crippled ships in the weeks after the bombardment. There were engineers, farmers, teachers, children. There was a doctor named Amir Okoye who delivered 2 babies in the past month using a medkit meant for sprained ankles. There was a botanist named Hana Park who'd kept 4 trays of seedlings alive in a storage locker, whispering to them every morning like they were her children. And there was Yuki Tanaka, who'd been a traffic controller for the Port Authority of Enceladus and now spent her days rationing oxygen, routing distress calls, and trying to keep people from giving up. She stood in the observation dome now, staring at the void where Marcus Chen had ignited a star. The Sun Eater's light had faded 30 minutes ago, but the afterimage still burned in her vision, a white circle that followed her gaze no matter where she looked. Behind her, the survivors gathered in clusters, speaking in hushed tones. Some wept, some prayed. Emilia sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing a picture of a sun with a yellow crayon. "Yuki." Amir's voice was soft, careful. He approached with a data tablet cradled against his chest. "The Kethrans are moving. Their fleet just broke orbit around Earth. Trajectory analysis says they're heading our way." She closed her eyes. Of course they were. Marcus had hurt them, humiliated them, proven that humanity still had teeth. The Kethrans wouldn't leave that unanswered. "How long do we have?" 72 hours, maybe less if they push their engines. "Can we evacuate?" Amir shook his head. "We've got 2 shuttles rated for deep space. Combined capacity, 40 people, and nowhere to go. The nearest colony outside this system is 3 weeks away at best speed." Yuki opened her eyes and looked at the survivors. Emilia, Hana with her seedlings, a teenager named Jovan who taught himself to play guitar on a battered 6-string someone had salvaged from a ruined transport. 372 lives, and she couldn't save them. Marcus had bought them time, 3 days, maybe 4, and she didn't know what to do with it. "We need a plan," she said. "We need a miracle," Amir replied. That night, Yuki couldn't sleep. She floated through the station's narrow corridors, checking pressure seals, rerouting power to failing life support nodes, doing anything to keep her hands busy. She passed the communal galley, where Hana sat alone with her seedlings, misting them with a spray bottle. The plants were small bean sprouts, tomato shoots, a single stubborn carrot top, but they glowed green under the grow lights, alive and stubborn. "Can't sleep either?" Hana asked without looking up. Yuki drifted closer. "Thinking too much. About Marcus, about what he did, what it cost." She paused. "What it means." Hana set down the spray bottle and touched one of the seedlings, her finger tracing the curve of a tiny leaf. "He didn't just buy us time. He reminded them we're dangerous, that even when we're broken, we can still burn." "But we're not dangerous anymore," Yuki said. "We're 300 people on a dying station. We don't have weapons. We don't have a fleet. We don't even have enough oxygen to last the month." Hana smiled, sad and small. "We have these." She gestured to the plants. "We have Emilia's drawings. We have Jovan's music. We have the fact that we're still here, still breathing, still trying. That's what Marcus protected, not soldiers or ships, us." Yuki felt something crack open in her chest, grief, maybe, or hope, or the terrible weight of responsibility. She nodded once and turned to leave, but Hana's voice stopped her. "Yuki, if we're going to die, let's at least make them remember us." Commander Vosh'kal stood in the war room of Dominion's Edge, staring at the tactical holo. The miniature projection showed Refuge Station Gamma in cold blue light, a fragile cluster of metal clinging to Titan's shadow. 372 life signs, no defenses, no ships capable of combat. It should have been an easy target, a footnote in the Kethran campaign. But every time Vosh'kal looked at it, he saw the human's face, calm, smiling, unafraid. "Silthar," he said, "what do we know about their weapons capabilities?" The tactical officer tapped her console and data scrolled across the holo. Minimal. The station has no weapon emplacements, no missile batteries, no energy shields. Their largest vessel is a cargo shuttle with a broken drive. By all metrics, they're defenseless. Then why did one human destroy 63 of our ships? Silthar's mandibles clicked nervously. The Sun Eater was a prototype, Commander. Illegal under their own laws. It's possible this was their last weapon, a final act of desperation. Or it's possible they're hiding more. Vosh'kal leaned over the holo, his compound eyes reflecting its blue glow. We underestimated them once. We sang victory while one of their salvage workers turned himself into a star. I won't make that mistake again. He straightened, all four arms folding behind his back. Prepare a bombardment solution. I want that station reduced to debris. No survivors, no warnings. We'll finish what we started. But even as he gave the order, doubt gnawed at him. The Kethran Dominion had conquered 47 species across 12 star systems, and not one of them had fought like this, not with weapons, but with sacrifice. The human hadn't tried to escape. He'd stayed, knowing the Sun Eater would kill him because destroying the fleet mattered more than his own life. What kind of species valued others above themselves? What kind of madness or love drove that choice? Vosh'kal pushed the thought away. Sentiment was weakness. The humans were broken and mercy would only invite rebellion. The fleet moved toward Titan, engines burning cold and blue. On Refuge Station Gamma, Yuki gathered the survivors in the communal galley. They sat on crates on the floor on jury-rigged benches, their faces drawn and tired. Emilia clutched her crayon drawing, Jovan held his guitar. Hana stood near the seedlings, arms crossed, jaw set. The Kethrans are coming, Yuki said, no point in softening it. They'll be here in 56 hours, we can't outrun them, we can't fight them. But we can choose how we meet them. Silence, then Jovan spoke, voice rough. What are you saying? I'm saying we don't go quietly. Yuki looked at each of them in turn. Marcus showed them we're not prey, we're not victims. We're people who fight, who sacrifice, who burn the whole damn sky if it means protecting what we love. So let's give them a reason to remember us. Amir frowned. Yuki, we don't have weapons. We have the station. She pulled up a schematic on her tablet. Gamma was built from salvage, right? Cargo haulers, fuel tanks, decommissioned reactor cores. If we vent the reactor coolant and overload the fusion cells, we can turn the whole station into a bomb. Not a Sun Eater, nothing that big, but enough to take out a few ships if they get close. You're talking about a suicide run, Hana said quietly. I'm talking about making them pay. Yuki's voice cracked. Marcus gave us 3 days, let's use them. The room erupted, arguments, tears, desperate plans shouted over one another, but slowly a consensus formed. They would rig the station. They would send out a distress beacon, lure the Kethrans close, and then light fire, one last act of defiance. Emilia tugged at Yuki's sleeve. Will it hurt? Yuki knelt down, eye level with the girl. No, sweetheart, it'll be bright, like fireworks. Emilia nodded, solemn. Mr. Chen's fireworks were really big. Yeah, Yuki whispered. They were. It took them 48 hours to turn Refuge Station Gamma into a weapon. Amir and his engineering team bypassed every safety protocol in the fusion reactor, rerouting coolant lines and disabling fail-safes until the core ran hot enough to melt steel. Hana rigged the oxygen tanks to vent on command, creating a fuel-air cloud around the station that would ignite like a matchstick. Jovan recorded a message, a song raw and aching about Earth and home and the people we lose, and set it to broadcast on every frequency. Emilia drew pictures for each of the children, little sons with smiling faces, and tucked them into the pockets of their jackets. Yuki sat in the control room watching the Kethran fleet approach. 137 ships moving in tight formation. They'd learned caution. They wouldn't get close enough for another Sun Eater. But they didn't know Gamma was a bomb. They thought it was a mercy kill, a cleanup operation. They thought the humans were already dead. Yuki, Amir said from the doorway, the reactor's primed, we're at critical mass. One more command and it's done. She nodded. Are the shuttles away? 40 people, families with young children. They'll reach the ice fields of Enceladus in 6 hours. Not enough to rebuild, but it's something. It's everything. She stood and turned to face him. "Thank you, Amir, for staying." He smiled, tired and sad. "Where else would I go?" The Kethran fleet entered weapons range. Vosh'kal stood on the bridge of Dominion's edge, watching the station grow larger in the viewport. It looked pathetic, a tangle of metal and desperation, barely held together. No lights, no movement. The humans were probably cowering in the dark, waiting for the end. "Silthar," he said, "commence bombardment." But before the weapons officer could respond, the station moved. Thrusters fired along its hull, crude and uneven, pushing it out of Titan's shadow and into open space. And then the lights came on, every panel, every viewport, every jury-rigged lamp blazing at once. The station glowed like a star, bright and defiant, and Jovan's song poured across the comms. "We were gardeners and builders, we were dreamers, we were kind. You took our world, you broke our hearts, but you can't kill what we leave behind." Vosh'kal froze. The song wrapped around the bridge, haunting and human, and for a moment he saw them not as enemies but as people, families, artists, the ones who plant gardens and sing songs and sacrifice everything for a stranger's chance at survival. "Commander," Silthar whispered, "they're venting oxygen. Energy signature spiking in their reactor. There, get us out of here," Vosh'kal roared. "Full reverse now." Yuki pressed the button. Refuge Station Gamma erupted. The fusion reactor went first, a white-hot sphere of plasma that tore through the hull in a microsecond. Then the oxygen cloud ignited, a blooming flower of fire that expanded in a perfect sphere, swallowing the station, the debris, and the 3 Kethran frigates that had moved too close. The explosion wasn't a sun-eater. It didn't have the gravity, the self-sustaining burn, but it was loud. It was bright. It screamed across every sensor in the system, a declaration that humanity had died fighting, had died burning, had refused to go quietly into the dark. Vosh'kal watched the fireball fade, his mandibles slack. 3 more ships lost. And for what? To kill 300 humans who were already doomed. "Commander," Silthar said softly, "we've won. Earth is gone. Their stations are destroyed. There's nothing left." But Vosh'kal didn't feel victorious. He felt hunted. Because somewhere in the ice fields of Enceladus, 40 humans were running. And somewhere in the wreckage of Refuge Gamma, buried in the song and the fire, was a promise. "We were here, we mattered, and we'll make you remember. Set course for the outer system," he said quietly. "Find the survivors." And then he didn't answer. Because he didn't know if hunting them was worth the cost. Didn't know if the Kethran Dominion could survive a species that turned love into weapons, grief into stars. The fleet moved on, but the song lingered. In the ice caves of Enceladus, 40 humans huddled around a portable heater. They'd watched the explosion from a distance, a brief, brilliant light that turned night to day for half a second. Emilia held her crayon drawing, the one she'd kept for herself, a sun with a smiling face, and underneath, in careful letters, "We are still here." An older woman named Cassandra, who'd been a historian before the war, cleared her throat. "We should remember their names. Yuki Tanaka, Amir Okoye, Hana Park, Jovan Reyes, Marcus Chen, all of them." The group murmured agreement. They would remember, they would survive. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not for years, they would rebuild, because that's what humans did. They planted gardens in the dark. They sang songs in the void. They turned grief into growth, rage into resistance, and even in their dying moments, they smiled. Emilia looked up at the stars through the ice cave entrance. "Do you think they're watching?" Cassandra nodded. "I think they're proud." And far above, in the cold emptiness where Refuge Station Gamma used to orbit, a single seedling drifted through the debris. It had survived the explosion, shielded by a twist of fate and a broken cargo container. Its leaves were green, its roots searched for soil that didn't exist, but it was alive, stubborn, human. It floated toward the distant sun, carried by solar wind, a promise in the dark that even stars couldn't extinguish.